Great. Well, welcome everybody. We're sorry for the delay. I do want to start by thanking everybody who has made this event, this important, the people behind the cameras, the people making the sound happen, and you for participating. My name is Neil Hetherington. I have the awesome privilege of being the CEO of the Daily Bread Food Bank. And we are here on site in Daily Bread's warehouse. This is where 17 million pounds of food is sorted and sent out to communities all across the city. And we are in the Etobicoke-Lakeshore riding. I'd like to start with an acknowledgement of what it means to be here on this land today. This land is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. This territory is part of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Bell Covenant, in agreement with the Anishinaabeg and Haudenosaunee allied nations to peaceably share and care for the lands. As part of that agreement, the nations described responsibility to ensure that the dish is never empty. And that is why we are here today. As a settler on this land, it's my responsibility to follow the spirit of this agreement, to not only show respect for the land, but to uphold the principles of reconciliation with the many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples who live here today. As we move into today's proceedings, I would ask that each of us consider reflecting on the sacred relationship between the land, the peoples, and food, our most basic human needs. Daily Bread's mission is to collaborate with all to eliminate food insecurity and advocate for solutions to end poverty. We are hosting this event with our partners at LAMP Community Health Center and Etobicoke-Lakeshore Community Network because we each believe that hunger and poverty are public policy issues requiring public policy solutions. A central element of the mission of Daily Bread is to advocate. We work with all levels of government and all political parties to realize a future where everyone's right to food is realized. And that's why elections are so critical. This is a time to have your voice heard. Now it's time to introduce members of the community who are willing to raise their hand and say, I'm willing to serve this community. I spoke with each of the candidates prior to this debate. And it was surprising how much they have in common. First, they all love this city and they all believe that this should be a country where food banks are not needed. And they all believe fervently that they all have a campaign that is going well and expected to win. So I want to welcome each of these candidates. And I'm going to start in alphabetical order by last name with Indira Bains, who is the Conservative Party candidate. Afam Elue, the Green Party candidate. Sasha Kane, who's joining us via Zoom, is the NDP candidate, and the Liberal candidate, James Maloney. I'm going to introduce now Ms. Dias, the Executive Director of LAMP Community Health Center. LAMP has been a pillar and partner of Daily Bread and the Etobicoke-Lakeshore community for decades, providing not only primary healthcare services, but wide-ranging programs to connect people and strengthen our community. Daily Bread provides necessary emergency food relief, but it's really the wraparound supports that LAMP provides that is seeing individuals live healthy and vibrant lives. So with that, I would ask Keddone to act as moderator today. Keddone.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our candidates in-house today. Welcome to Sasha, who's joining us via Zoom, and welcome to all of you who are joining us via Zoom today and participating in this debate. Great to have you here and great to be here. Just a few remarks. LAMP is always happy to be able to participate in events like this to make sure that our community members are well informed and encouraged to take part in the electoral process and to use the strength of their voices to ensure that they strengthen their communities. So very happy to be here with all of you. The election is on Monday, September 20th. Voting is your way to exercise your voice and to make sure that the issues that matter to you are spoken for in this election. So what exactly does the federal government do? A quick 101 on what you can expect to the federal government to participate with and to take care of in our communities. So the federal government is directly responsible for certain things like foreign affairs, national defense, Indigenous relations, federal taxes, and employment insurance. They also set policies and provide funding for areas that are administered by the provincial government, like healthcare, childcare, and housing. Those issues that really hit closer to home. The federal government is not responsible for municipal issues like filling potholes or garbage collection, for example. However, the federal government can sometimes provide special funding to help municipalities out with big projects like public transit, for example. And so that was a very quick 101 on what the federal government does do and doesn't do. And we're really happy that you are here today with us to learn more about what you can expect from our candidates as this election approaches. I will now explain our procedures for today. So bear with me as we get through some of this housekeeping. Candidates will have 2 minutes to make opening remarks. The order in which the candidates will speak will be determined by drawing names out of my trusty bowl here. When there are 30 seconds left in a candidate's allotted time to speak, Tulshi will flash this pink paper. So Tulshi, can you give us a wave of your pink paper? Okay, that's your indication that 30 seconds are left in your time. At the end of the allocated time, a bell will sound and we will move on to the next candidate who is next to speak. After opening remarks, we will move to moderated questions. There will be 3 questions asked and candidates will have 2 minutes each to respond to the questions. The response order will rotate so that everyone gets an opportunity to speak first and to share their response. Audience, you are also welcome to participate in this debate by submitting your questions via the Zoom Q&A function. So those who are participating on Zoom, please put your questions in the Q&A. For those on the phone, you will not be left out. You can submit your questions via email to research@dailybread.ca. So that is research@dailybread.ca. Audience questions will be provided to me, your moderator today, and we will get through as many questions as time permits. Apologies in advance, because I am sure we will not get through all of the questions that will be posed today. However, you can always reach out to your candidates individually at their offices or contacting their campaigns to ask those questions that are not addressed today. Candidates will have 2 minutes each to answer the questions from our audience, and all candidates will be invited to respond to each question asked, regardless of whether that question was directly asked of a particular candidate. Again, the order of candidates answering each question will rotate, and they will have 2 minutes to answer. Quick reminder, and the last piece of our housekeeping, we are looking forward to a respectful discussion and debate today where our community gets access to information that will further inform them about how to participate and what your platforms are offering in this election. The Zoom meeting is closed captioned, and the event is being live streamed and reported to Daily Bread's Facebook page, but the video only shows the candidates, not the audience. So we will not see your beautiful faces or hear you today. Audience members, your cameras and mics have all been disabled, so we cannot see or hear you. Okay, without further ado, we will get started. I'm going to draw the first name and get started with our opening remarks. And we are starting with Sasha Kane, our NDP candidate who's joining us virtually today. Sasha, Please go ahead.
Okay, sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I don't know. Okay, well, I hope that you can hear me. And I would like to begin for apologizing for not being able to attend in person. And I caught a cold a few days ago and I haven't fully recovered yet. So please excuse any sniffling or coughing, but I'm excited to attend regardless of this, and even if it is through Zoom, so thank you for having me. And I'll just talk a little bit about myself, that I've just turned 23. I'm a political science major from Western, and I actually decided to become a candidate because I wanted to do something for myself, for the people I care about, and even if the odds aren't in my favor, I wanted to be helpful and hopeful, and I wanted to learn about my community on a more intimate level, even though I did grow up here. And this experience for me has definitely solidified the fact that we all have our own power, and when we use it together as a collective, we can make great strides towards improving the lives of each other, of our family, of our friends, of our neighbors. And I'm just getting started with politics, and I can't wait to learn and grow and hopefully meet all of you in person eventually.
Great. Thank you, Sasha. I will draw our second name. Indira Bains, our Conservative candidate. Please go ahead.
Hello, friends. I'm Indira Bains, your Conservative candidate for Etobicoke-Lakeshore, and hello to my colleagues as well. And Sasha, I hope you feel better soon. The election is all about jobs and getting Canada back on track. And that's what Conservatives are committed to doing and securing the future. We will secure jobs, we'll secure the economy, we'll secure accountability, and we'll secure mental health and the country. And I ask you folks, and I ask you friends, to think about us when it comes on election day. We're here, we have a plan, it's a great plan, and we're ready to move forward and get everyone back on track. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Indira. And our next candidate is James Maloney, our Liberal candidate. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Keddone, and thank you for, let me start by saying thank you to the Daily Bread Food Bank. Thank you to LAMP for putting this on. I always enjoy coming to the Daily Bread Food Bank. I want to thank Neil and his team. I see people from LAMP here who are always powerful advocates for the community. I've been telling Neil Hetherington and his team for years since I got elected, the only business in Etobicoke-Lakeshore I would like to see go out of business is the food bank. But all I can say right now is thank God they have, because during this pandemic, when the community, this community and people across Toronto and across this province needed help, Daily Bread and organizations like LAMP were there for them. So thank you for that. During this pandemic, our government has stepped up. We've stepped up on helping people survive during times that were incredibly challenging. We introduced benefits. Let's talk about this community. We have between 4,300 and 4,400 small businesses in Etobicoke-Lakeshore alone. Without supports like the wage subsidy and the rent subsidy, a large number of those would have been bankrupt by now. And I'm proud of what our government has done to step up. And I'm proud of what we've done to help the Daily Bread Food Bank and other organizations. We've put over $300 million towards food security and repurposing food during this pandemic alone, so that you could continue doing your job, which is so vital to this community and this province. This is what this election's about. Sasha can't be here today because she did the responsible thing. She's got a cold, so she stayed home. The responsible thing for Canadians to do, and what our government stands for, is to get vaccinated. My party, me, I believe that every member of parliament, every candidate should be vaccinated, and every Canadian who is able to get vaccinated should do so. Mr. O'Toole and the Conservatives won't make that commitment, and that is unacceptable. If we want to continue the progress we've made during this pandemic and have this economic recovery that Indira just talked about, that's the way to do it. And it's unacceptable that anybody doesn't endorse that view, in my opinion. So thank you for doing this today.
Thank you, James. And last but certainly not least, our Green Party candidate, Afam Elue.
Good afternoon. What if this election is not about politics? Who is a liberal, conservative, or a moderate? What if it's not about government? Who's in power and the agenda? What if it's really about science and what science says about our security, culture, and economics? The IPCC report, which is a group of international scientists put together by the United Nations, calls for a climate emergency, where the impact of a runaway global warming may be irreversible if we don't meet certain targets to keep average temperature increase below 1.5 degrees Celsius. This warmth of the Earth is caused by pollution from greenhouse gas emissions into the atmosphere. And nature seems to be fighting back with effects like the pandemic, forest fires, and heat dome. The biggest pollutants are fossil fuel companies. Yet, our government keeps subsidizing these filthy rich companies to the tune of billions of dollars per year and investing in new infrastructure like the Trans Mountain Pipeline, which has a price tag of over $10 billion. Yes, the government is taking climate action, but while still spending on corporates that effectively undermining their own efforts. It's like trying to fill up the bathtub while the drain is unblocked, right? In my opinion, the most viable plan to meet the climate crisis is a Green Party. I'm standing for green action. How will you vote this election?
Thank you, Afam. Thank you to all our candidates for your opening remarks. We will now move into our moderated questions. And I'll get started with our first question. The pandemic has caused unprecedented job losses. Emergency income benefits, like the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, played a critical role in preventing people from falling into poverty. Despite these important pandemic benefits, many people in our community are still struggling to afford their basic needs. Here at Daily Bread Food Bank, they saw a record-breaking 124,000 food bank visits in a single month in June, compared to an average of 68,000 monthly visits in 2019. With federal pandemic income support programs ending in October, what will you do to ensure that every person in Canada has adequate income to afford keeping a roof overhead and food on their plates? I'm going to start with Mr. Elue this time and go to our right. Please go ahead.
Well, it's no secret that the Green Party has pushed for several social and affordability supports for all Canadians. Guaranteed livable income paired with freedom of education for low income, free education and integrated retrofitting of houses for energy efficiency all contribute to food and housing security for low, middle income housing. How will we pay for this? Well, by closing tax loopholes, not paying subsidies to fossil fuel companies, to name a few. The COVID-19 pandemic has exposed how many Canadians still lack a basic safety net to protect them in times of financial difficulty. In Canada, one of the richest countries, 10% of people live in poverty and do not access to a standard living adequate for health or well-being, a right enshrined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Poverty is expensive. The Canadian government spends over $20 billion in EI transfers to low-income families per year. Poverty is also the largest social determinant of health impact, education outcomes, crime, and treatments with criminal justice systems. It's not an overstatement to say that CERB saved lives. Yet, too many people are being left without support. 1/3 of Canadians were ineligible for either EI or CERB. Instead of plugging holes one by one, the solution is to create comprehensive benefits, the guaranteed livable income. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Maloney?
Thank you, and thank you for the question. It's a critical issue, to make a big understatement. Look, I think if one clear thing is clear during the last 18 months, my government, I'm very proud to say, stepped up, because there are a lot of holes in our system, as Afam has pointed out. Look, COVID exposed a lot of weaknesses in Canadian society, whether it's in housing, whether it's in food security, or whether it's in income support. We have an employment insurance system in Canada that was a model created that worked 50 years ago. It doesn't work in 2021. That became instantly apparent when the pandemic struck. And that's why the programs like the CERB were so critical. That's why programs like the wage subsidy were so important, and the rent subsidy, and a number of other programs, because this helped people who were otherwise left stranded, frankly. And that's why it's important going forward. We've made changes to the employment insurance program already. We've raised minimum wage to $15 at the federal level. We don't have control of that across the board, because a lot of that falls on responsibility of the provincial government. We need a strong Liberal government at the federal level to work with the provincial Conservative government to make sure that these supports are in place. We saw what happened during the pandemic. It was the federal government that stepped in. It was long-term care, food security, housing. I look at those numbers over there, Keddone, they're staggering. 13 million pounds of food distributed, an 18% increase. That's unacceptable. We need to remodel the system. We've started doing it already, and we have plans to continue, because we learned some very valuable lessons in the last 18 months. We're taking those lessons. It's evidence-based decision-making, and we're going to modify the system. In this riding, the film and television industry is significant. Thousands of people work in that. These are all independent employees. They didn't have supports when this happened. We've designed a system that's going to fill that gap and help them out going forward, and that's just one example. 2 minutes isn't enough to talk about these subjects, unfortunately. We need longer to talk about every one of them. We need 2 hours, not 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Baines?
Thank you. So as Mr. Maloney mentioned, there are a lot of programs right now to help people get through the pandemic. But one of the questions that I keep getting at the door is, why are we having a federal election now? We need to concentrate on rebuilding Canada, bringing it back and bringing it back on track. Why is there a federal election now? What are we going to do about EI and the changes to it? One, sickness, critical illness for citizens, like cancer. Right now, it is 15 weeks. We are going to increase that to 52 weeks so that people can actually take care of their health and return back to their life afterwards. Current 15 weeks is not okay. What we're going to also do, what we want to do is we also want to help people that have been impacted by the pandemic and their jobs, is to get them back on their feet. We want to increase the apprentice tax credit, double it, so that we can actually get people in the trades. We want to go ahead and provide a $250 million training fund, so people can actually upgrade their skills and go back into the workforce. The workforce might have changed since they joined it and now find themselves laid off, be it by the pandemic or any other crisis that's out there. These are real solutions to get people to work. Now, CERB was what we needed. We needed that. We had a crisis, but now it's time to move on. And what we're also implementing as well is to give incentives to businesses to bring in new hires, that where we will pay their 25% of the new hire salary. Anyone that's been laid off for more than 6 months will pay 50% of their salary to get it back into the market for 6 months. So these are the things that we're looking at doing, is actually getting the economy moving. But right now we're in the middle of a federal election. Make sure your vote counts. We did not need an election now. Everything was working fine. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much. And Ms. Kane, please go ahead.
Okay, so I would just like to start by saying that, without the federal NDP and Jagmeet Singh, we wouldn't have had CERB as for as much, or the Canadian Emergency Wage Subsidy. There needs to be continual support, because even when CERB ends, that does not mean that everyone is making adequate income to be able to afford housing and food. And when we set out to recover from the pandemic and move on from CERB, the way to do this is not by cutting back social program spending. We're still in a pandemic and we will continue to feel its impact very long into the future, which means that people still need assistance. So we plan on implementing and regulating an affordable housing program at the federal level. NDP has promised to build 500,000 units of safe and affordable housing in the next 10 years to provide immediate rent relief, stop investors from increasing the cost of living for Canadians as well. And it's also worth mentioning that these units will be energy efficient, and that is something that we need to implement considering our climate emergency. And it's also important to note that I think that the federal definition of affordable housing should not only be changed, but it should also be enforced. Right now, it's considered less than 30% of every household's pre-tax income. But I think Toronto Acorn's affordability matrix is a better representation of what we should be doing for truly affordable housing, like including the median income area, the individual income, household size, the type of housing. This matrix doesn't overlook low-income households, people with disabilities, families or seniors, and in the end, when you save on housing, you'll also be able to afford other necessities like food.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Thank you. And that is a perfect segue into our second question. All four of your parties have released platforms about affordable housing. This is clearly an issue many Canadians are paying close attention to, and that's impacting many Canadians. But affordable housing can mean many things depending on how we define affordable, the type of housing we're referring to, and who will benefit. This question is for renters. It's on behalf of renters who are on the verge of losing their affordable homes, or they're worried about eviction. Right now, 11% of renters in Toronto are in arrears. Others are being, or already have been, displaced through renoviction, which is when a tenant is evicted for renovations. Frequently in these situations, the landlord, who is often a large private company, is able to rent out the unit for a much higher rent, while the former tenant may be unable to afford a new unit at market value. The wait list for subsidized housing in Toronto has close to 80,000 people on it, taking people 7 to 12 years to gain access to housing. What will your party do to support renters who are struggling today? I will start with Mr. Maloney.
Thank you. Excellent question. This problem has become much more acute during the last 18 months because it ties into things we've been discussing, like food security, employment. On the issue of renovictions, we have a plan to do this. I mean, landlord-tenant issues, people need to understand is provincial responsibility. So the levers the federal government have are limited, but here's what we're going to do. We're going to create a rule that restricts landlords from doing just that. So what they're going to have to do is they're going to have to report on their income tax what the rent was before the renovation and what the rent was after the renovation. Because as you point out quite accurately, what these landlords are doing is they're using this as an opportunity to get people out so that they can charge higher rent to somebody else who can afford it. So what you do is we're going to put a surtax on the increased amount of rent that they're getting after. So it will act as a financial deterrent and a barrier to these landlords from being able to go out and do exactly what you're talking about, because it's becoming increasing more of a problem in Toronto. This problem existed prior to the pandemic. I'll say it again, it's become much more acute since the pandemic. Another initiative that we're working on for renters is a rent-to-own program, because part of the problem we have in Toronto, where it's so incredibly expensive, if you can afford rent, that's at the cost of trying to save money to purchase a home. So we've created a program where renters can use that money towards a down payment in their home. There's a $1 billion commitment from the Liberal Party, from this federal government, to help those people work with landlords so that their rent can actually count towards a down payment. So they don't have to do both. You take two streams and you combine them into one. That will make a significant difference for a lot of people. In terms of affordable housing, I am very proud to stand on our record. I work with John Tory week in and week out. And housing is the discussion we have every single time we have a conversation. And we have put more money into affordable housing in the city of Toronto to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars. The Conservatives want to sell federal land to developers so that they can build more condos in the city. That's not acceptable for Etobicoke-Lakeshore, and it's certainly not acceptable for anywhere else. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Maloney. Ms. Baines, please go ahead.
I'm not sure where you got your information from, James, but thank you
Your
for
leader.
that comment. So what we're going to be doing is low rental properties are an issue. Affordability is an issue, and affordability has gotten worse under the Liberal government. Taxes, we're talking more and more taxes, any conversation that we have. So that is not the answer either. We don't have enough homes. We don't have enough units to actually house people in the GTA and throughout the country. Now, we have committed to building 1 million homes over the next 10 years. And that is actual, where there is no, I want to also take a look at the costing plan as well for the Liberal solution. It doesn't make sense. We're actually going to work with municipalities to deal with the rental issues and deal with the low vacancies. You go downtown, there's rows of condos that are vacant, but what is it? Foreign ownership as well. So these are the things that we want to target. We want to pause and stop foreign ownership. We want to tax foreign ownership of homes here in Canada, because homes should be for Canadians first. And renters, we need to take a look at affordability once again. The price of homes keep going up, but now we've talked about the actual wages. They haven't gone up alongside in proportion with the price of homes. So these are things that we need to take a look at, not just throw an idea out there and hope it sticks. Another thing we're talking about is renters and getting good paying jobs for people. And this is where we go back to giving credits for apprenticeship, giving our training fund so that people can actually go and get trained for the jobs that are for tomorrow and today, so that they can earn a better working wage. Those are our solutions. Those are workable solutions. Those are viable solutions.
Thank you, Ms. Baines. Okay, Ms. Kane, please go ahead.
Okay, so as of right now, especially in Etobicoke, working class people, they're being pushed out of safe and affordable housing. There's landlords, developers who only care about maximizing their own profits. And the federal government continues to support these developers and their so-called affordable rental units, when in reality, these initiatives are not affordable for working class people. They're not affordable for people who rely on ODSP, and they're not available for those in core housing that make below $30,000 a year. To support renters who are struggling right now, we need to extend rent subsidies, provide immediate rental relief, and stop rent evictions. To do this, we need to have a government who will tighten rental control laws immediately and sustain these initiatives in the long run. Doing it for a year or two doesn't solve the problem. This needs to be implemented and maintained. Otherwise, you'll continue to have predatory landlords who will exploit vulnerable Canadians.
Thank you, Ms. Kane. And Mr. Elue?
The pandemic created a band-aid solution when there have been long-term proposals by housing experts for a long time. Renters need to get out and vote. Vote for a party that will keep its promises and not give monies to companies that send profits offshore to investors. In the short term, we will establish a national moratorium on evictions, maintain a moratorium on evictions until the pandemic is over for a reasonable time thereafter, in cooperation with the provincial governments, and will create a national standard to establish rent and vacancy controls, while implementing our longer-term solutions, such as retrofitting homes to be energy efficient, building more social and green housing, and refocus the CMHC to do what it's meant to do, affordable housing. And how we pay for this? We'll raise the empty home tax for foreign and corporate residential property owners who leave buildings and units vacant. Assess the role of real estate investment trusts, REITs, in the Canadian housing market. We'll close tax haven loopholes that allow foreign investors to hide the names of beneficial owners of properties in Canada. We'll crack down on money laundering in Canadian real estate. A green government will provide a retroactive residential arrears assistance to protect Canadians at risk of eviction or being driven into homelessness due to accumulated rent in arrears, as recommended by experts. We will invest in construction and operation of 50,000 supportive housing units in the next decade. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. That's an important piece there, the affordable housing impact on the lives of people in our Etobicoke community and right across the city and right across this country. So looking forward to see what your campaigns bring forward around that as we get closer to the election. I'll move now to our third question. When they lose their job, less than 40% of unemployed Canadians are currently eligible to receive employment insurance, compared to more than 75% in the 1990s. The nature of work has changed. More people are working in the gig economy and in temporary part-time contract roles. The 2021 Parliamentary Committee report found that the current EI program no longer reflects the realities of today's labor market and is not well positioned to respond to sudden labor market disruptions, such as those that have resulted from the COVID-19 pandemic. What changes will you and your party make to EI to better meet today's employment and training needs for Canadians out of work and make sure that those who lose their jobs have access to EI? I will start this time with Ms. Baines, please.
So we do recognize the gig economy. It's a huge economy. And what we're committing to is that gig companies to contribute the equivalent of the CPP and the EI payments into an account for the gig workers that can be drawn upon whenever they need it. So if they are out of a job, if their contract is over, that's the commitment that we're making. But we need to have the companies actually support these workers by contributing the CPP and EI portions of those payments to the special accounts for these workers.
Right. Thank you, Ms. Baines. Ms. Kane?
So I definitely agree that our current EI program does not work in the best interest of Canadians. It's inflexible, it's underfunded, and even before COVID, only 40% of unemployed people were eligible for EI. Unfortunately, we have an increasingly precarious labor market, and it's expected that automation, AI will put millions of Canadians out of work. And EI is not suited to address this unemployment or the increased amount of part-time positions that we're currently going through. So there needs to be immediate investment in training, in well-paying green energy jobs. There's potential to provide stable employment for so many Canadians, and that will better equip Canada to help fight climate change as well. And to reform EI for the better, there should be also a low income supplement so that EI does not provide less than $2,000 a month. And we will also eliminate any disqualifications for those who choose to quit their job to return to school or to attend family responsibilities like childcare or healthcare for another family member. And it can ensure that sick leave is extended from 15 to 50 weeks. And there should also be accommodation for workers with episodic illnesses or episodic disabilities to access EI depending on their needs instead of us telling them what they should be getting. We need to be investing money in people who need a bit more help, and it's not only morally right, but it also can stimulate our economy as well.
Thank you. And Mr. Elue?
The Green Party has long advocated for a deep shift in how financial support is offered to Canadians. By offering free education and a guaranteed livable income, coupled with our strategy to transition workers to a green economy, we will ditch the need for EI, having to wait for training opportunities that don't fit green economies. When people have a secure income, they can choose the best fit for how they can contribute to their communities, either through work or volunteering, and can choose what education best fits their long-term and family needs. We will expand opportunities for reskilling and retraining by increasing the Canadian training benefits to support continuous learning. Education is a fundamental human right, and universal access to quality post-secondary education and skills training is a right, not a privilege.
Thank you. Mr. Maloney, please go ahead.
Thank you for the question. Another very, very important issue. I mean, I'll say it again because I'm particularly proud that our government proved that it is there for people in their time of need. These programs that were rolled out, many of which were opposed by the Conservatives, I might add, during the last Parliament, were there to help people accomplish the goals that this question is about. We need to amend the Employment Insurance Act. As I said earlier, this is a model that worked in the 1950s. It doesn't work in 2021. So we've made some amendments. We've extended the benefits from 15 weeks to 26 weeks for people who are self-employed. As I mentioned earlier, here in Etobicoke-Lakeshore, I was out earlier today with somebody who's been working in the film and television industry for his entire life. That is just one industry, you know, the so-called gig economy. We need to amend the Canada Labor Code to make sure that people who are self-employed and work in that industry and many others here in Etobicoke-Lakeshore and across the country have the same rights and privileges that other people who are paid employees who have deductions from their paychecks. We're going to amend the Income Tax Act so that gig economies, employees, and other people who are self-employed have the same rights and benefits that other employees do. Another concern is, and this is relevant to the work you do here, is a lot of people lose their job at a stage in life through no fault of their own. The company might go out of business. They've reached a certain age where it's easier to hire somebody who's younger. We've created a benefit specifically for those people who have worked for an employer for 5 years or more. So they have 2 years worth of benefits that allows them to get retraining, find a new job, and find some new direction that they can take with their life. That's critical because we have a lot of people, and you would see it here at the Daily Bread Food Bank. A lot of these people lose their jobs through no fault of their own, and they're at an age and they've worked in one place for a significant amount of time and they have nothing to fall back on. That's not going to happen anymore after this election if the Liberals are re-elected.
Thank you, Mr. Maloney, and thank you all of our candidates. We are going to move into our audience questions now, and thank you to our audience for sending over some fantastic questions. We will do our best to get through as many of them as possible in the time that we have remaining. The first question for our candidates is, mental health supports available to those in need has been inadequately resourced for a long time. With the additional mental health challenges that have been brought on during the pandemic, what is your plan and your party's plan for addressing mental health needs in local communities and right across the country? We're going to start with Ms. Kane for this question.
Okay, sorry, just figuring out how to mute the Zoom. So I think this is a really important question, and you know, as a new grad and being young, I also know that it can be very, very hard to find affordable healthcare access, mental health care access as well. And I know that the NDP, as well as myself, believes that providing coverage for mental health services is definitely a top priority for people, especially considering we are coming out of COVID, which has been so hard on everybody. And it's a stress that we've never encountered before. So providing, you know, free diagnosis and also universal pharmacare can help a lot of people who would have otherwise not been able to go out and get the help that they need as well.
Thank you for your response. Mr. Elue, please go ahead.
So every year, 1 in 5 Canadians will experience a mental health issue or illness. Canada's youth suicide rate is 3rd largest in the industrial world. We have First Nations under the age of 44 with suicide rates being 11 times the national average. All these stats are unacceptable. The Green government will establish a national mental health strategy and suicide prevention strategy. We'll increase investments in Indigenous-led mental health, where the Indigenous community can have input into how this issue is resolved. We'll support First Nations, Métis, and Inuits rebuilding traditional knowledge systems around healing and wellness. We'll invest in youth mental health and invest in community supportive housing. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Maloney, please go ahead.
Thank you for this very important question. First thing I did after I was elected in 2015 was I met with a group of people and I talked to them about mental health. I said, let's have a town hall, let's have a discussion. My intention was to make it a services fair for people who could find out what services are available. The unfortunate thing is what you learn very quickly is the services aren't there. I've continued to do that every single year. I have a mental health town hall. The last 2 years, I've done it by Zoom. Most recently, I did it with a doctor from CAMH and somebody from LAN. It's still online if you want to go watch it, because this pandemic, like so many other things, as I've already indicated, has made issues that were already there that much more apparent to everybody. It doesn't matter if you're rich or poor, old or young, live with others or live by yourself. This pandemic has had a significant impact on people's mental health. It's stressed friendships, it's stressed family relationships, it's stressed employment relationships. Something needs to be done. The first thing we did after we were elected is we gave the provinces $3 billion in healthcare funding specifically for mental health. It's the first time in Canadian history, to my knowledge, the federal government has earmarked funds for healthcare specifically, because healthcare delivery is a provincial responsibility. We need to continue working on that. 3 years ago in our budget, Bill Morneau, who was the finance minister at the time, committed $25 million towards a national suicide hotline. And he'll tell you it's because I bugged him and bugged him and bugged him. People would assume something like that exists. The infrastructure to support mental health is not there. We've done some good work. Much more needs to be done. That's an example of my commitment, the hotline, the local community, and I'm going to continue to fight for that. And our government has made it very clear that this is a priority for not just me, but for our entire caucus and the Prime Minister. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Bains.
Thank you. So through our Canada Mental Health Plan, we will be increasing the funding that's currently available for mental health. Mental health is health. And we will also be setting up a 3-digit national suicide prevention hotline as well. We have, like Mr. Maloney and the others have said, there is a problem. The pandemic just made it worse. The domestic abuse has gone up. There's been a lot more violence. Crime has increased by 20% in the last 6 years. So this is taking a big impact on mental health, and we are committed. We are committed to mental health, and we will actually take action and increase the amounts, the funds, in order to support mental health. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your responses. I will move to our second question. And it's a very simple and straightforward question, but for a very complex issue. Do you believe food is a human right? And Mr. Elue, I'm going to start with you this time.
Absolutely. Food is a fundamental human right. We've seen the statistics that 10% of Canadians are living under poverty. That's why the Green Party is committed to the guaranteed livable income, which will provide dignity, which will provide food and housing for every Canadian. This will take away the stress, take away all of the burdens on the government of managing all these different programs like EI and CERB and all of these different programs. And the guaranteed livable income will be a one-stop shop that allows food insecurity to be a thing of the past. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Elue. Mr. Maloney.
The answer is yes, plain and simple. It's a complicated problem, but it's not a complicated question. You're quite right to put it that way. But in October of 2016, I came into the Daily Bread Food Bank, and I met with the gentleman who was responsible for a lot of the operations here at the time. And I said, I asked him, have you noticed any significant changes in the trends in the last few months? He said, yes, since July 1st, the number of families has decreased. The number of families coming into the food bank has decreased. And that was because of the Canada Child Benefit. These programs that we've introduced, like the Canada Child Benefit, the increased supplement for seniors, these benefits, you can see the direct impact, and you see it here at the food bank. The number of seniors that are coming to the food bank has gone down because of those programs. The number of families has gone down because of those programs. These are the type of initiatives you need. Food is a human right. The question is, how do you make sure that people get it? And these are the type of programs. Those two are glaring examples, and you can see it firsthand right here at the Daily Bread Food Bank. It's made a significant impact. It's not the total solution, but it's part of the solution, and we're on our way to making it better. I'll say again, I want to live in a world where the Daily Bread Food Bank doesn't have to exist. But these are the type of programs we need to continue to bolster, enhance, and expand to make sure that that right is actually something that people have, not something they aspire to have.
Thank you. Ms. Baines.
Absolutely, it's a right. It's a right. Food is an absolute right. But what I'm hearing at the doors is affordability is going. People cannot afford food, and it's getting worse. And it has been getting worse over the last 6 years. And so these are the things that people are saying to me. How do I afford food? I can't afford my rent. I can't afford to take my kids anywhere. And so these are the issues that I'm facing at the door. But I now want to know, what has the government been doing? And so these are the changes that we want to implement. Now inflation is at a 10-year high. That doesn't help the food issue either. So what is actually happening? What are we doing to make it better? I'm not seeing it in the current government programs. They're not enough. They're just not enough. We are committed to actually make people's lives more affordable. Tax after tax is not enough. We do need to increase and have programs available to people that need them. And we need to get people out and working that are able to work. The ones that are not able to work, we should have effective programs to take care of them. That's where we stand on food and poverty.
Thank you. Ms. Kane.
So, I mean, yes, the right to food is a human right. And I also believe that this kind of just expands beyond having adequate food. I know that sometimes there are food deserts, and instead there are fast food chains that are there instead. People go and eat there, and that might be food, but it's not adequate food that helps people live healthy lives. And in the long run, if you're not having healthy and in that way adequate food, eventually in the long run there'll be complications with health. So I do think that, yes, we can say simply that it is a human right, but it also requires that people are getting nutritious food, healthy food, that they're learning about what they should be eating as well.
Thank you, Ms. Kane. Great, thank you all for that. Our next question, another important issue for families. Affordable childcare is critical for many living in Etobicoke-Lakeshore. What do each of you candidates and your parties plan to do to make daycare more affordable? And I will start with Mr. Maloney.
Thank you. Critical issue, part of our platform that I'm particularly proud of. We are proposing, we're going to introduce $10 a day daycare. This is going to be a cost saving for families, young families. We're also going to build more spaces. And that's critical too. You can't say it's going to be $10 a day daycare if you've got nowhere to send the kids. It's impossible. You've seen the model in Quebec. We're going to enhance the model in Quebec, and we're going to introduce a similar model across the province. Right now, we have agreements with 8 provinces and territories across the country. Aaron O'Toole has made it very clear. He said it several times this week alone. He's going to cancel it, and he's going to introduce a tax credit. Well, the parliamentary budget officer came out yesterday, and he showed the tax credit is of no value. Finding a place to put your kids is no good. It's no good to have a tax credit if you have no income to deduct it from. And that's what we're talking about. The people who need daycare, the same thing as a right to have food. You need these things so you can go out and work. You need to take these worries off of your plate so that you can go out, get a job, work for your family, and do what needs to be done. Daycare is critical. In 2006, the federal Liberal government at the time had a national daycare strategy ready to roll out. We had agreements with all the provinces and territories. And the Conservatives and the NDP under Stephen Harper and Jack Layton teamed up to defeat the Liberal government. Here we are years later trying to do it again. Please don't let that happen again. Jagmeet Singh went on television yesterday and said the Liberals have been promising daycare for years and they've never delivered. His party is as much responsible for that fact as the Conservatives are. This is a critical piece of our platform. This tax deduction proposal that's in the Conservative platform mathematically doesn't work. And that's been shown yesterday by the parliamentary budget officer. So childcare, $10 a day in this community. I go to doors in this community, young families, and they're so appreciative of this idea because it means so much. Daycare is becoming more and more and more expensive, and it has to become more affordable.
Thank you. Ms. Bains?
So I do agree that lack of daycare is not good for families, especially women. It keeps women from entering the workforce and staying out of the workforce. So I do agree, we need to have a good program for affordable daycare. But once again, the government had 6 years to implement this program. Why now? Why wait now? So once again, we'll have incentives and provide daycare to the people that really need it. But we need to get more women out and working in the workforce, and not having daycare, affordable daycare, is not a good reason not to be able to enter the workforce.
Thank you, Ms. Bains. Ms. Kane?
So I know that during this pandemic, especially, women were bearing a lot of the brunt of COVID-19. And one of the reasons for that is because they would typically be the ones to care for their family after things close down, after daycare closed down as well. So even universal childcare is a right. We should not be denying people opportunities simply because they have a family. Everyone is entitled to have their family and then also be able to pay for their family as well. So I think that I know that the NDP wants to provide finally universal childcare program. And I think that this would best benefit women and also families as a whole. Thank you.
Right. Thank you for that. Mr. Elue.
So the Green Party has 5 steps to resolve this issue. One is to eliminate GST on all construction costs related to childcare spaces. We want to dedicate additional resources to making universal, affordable early learning and childcare systems a reality. So these principles will ensure a right of access for all children, regardless of their parent status or income levels, while at the same time allowing for a regional and local adaptation. We want to improve and strengthen parental leave. This will make parental leave more inclusive, so it covers leave to care for elderly family members, leave following miscarriages, and more flexible and better paid. We want to increase federal funding to childcare. This is immediately to begin to ramp up federal care funding to achieve the international benchmark, at least 1% of GDP annually towards childcare. We want a long-term, stable national funding that must be made available and be sufficient to meet the standards and guiding principles. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that. I will move to our third question now and change gears a bit. Canada is the only G7 country without a national school meal program. Will your party take the necessary steps to implement a national food program and feed Canadian children? Ms. Bains, please get us started.
I believe that no child in Canada should go hungry, period. We are one of the G7 richest countries. We should not have poverty here in Canada, but especially with children. I fully support food programs for children in schools.
Thank you. Ms. Kane?
I was wondering if you could repeat the question, please.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Canada is the only G7 country without a national school meal program. Will your party take the necessary steps to implement a national meal program and feed Canadian children?
Yes, the NDP is definitely committed to providing healthy food for people, sufficient food for people. Children, we know that when they go to school hungry, they don't learn as well. And this is just another example of how poverty holds back people from reaching their full potential. And there has been no national strategy. There's no attempt to improve access to healthy food, especially for kids. And I think that it's such a shame that we don't have a strategy like this. But when it comes to accessing nutritious food for children, the NDP would make sure that there is not a single child who needs to be fed and who goes to school unfed. We would implement a national school nutrition program.
Thank you, Ms. Kane. Mr. Elue?
Yes. The Green Party will definitely employ a national food program that feeds students in schools. The agriculture and food sector is an engine of the Canadian economy. This system employs more than 2 million people in Canada. As a comparison, the oil and gas sector employs about 500,000. It is vital to the economic viability and social fabric of rural communities to keep safe and secure food supply, and essentially the health of the environment and ecosystem services. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Maloney?
Yeah, thank you for the question. The short answer is yes. I mean, the programs I've talked about, like the Canada Child Benefit, these other programs that we've rolled out, they're designed for that exact purpose. So that, look, I have a number of teachers working on my campaign, and the stories you hear from them about children coming to school who are hungry, it's appalling and it's unacceptable. We've worked with municipalities and we worked with other local community governments, provincial governments, to fund programs like this so that they can get rolled out. But the benefits that we're talking about, like the Canada Child Benefit and other programs that we've mentioned tonight, these are precisely the type of programs that are going to help solve that problem. A national program of the type that you're talking about with schools, I fully support. A number of my colleagues fully support. It's something we've had discussions of, and it's something that we will definitely support going forward.
Thank you. Our next question, and we've got just a few more minutes, so I'll try to get as many questions in as possible. Our next question is, what is your position on mandatory vaccinations? I will start with Ms. Kane.
So my position on mandatory vaccinations, for federal workers, I would say that it should be mandatory. I myself am double vaccinated, and I chose to do that because I know that in doing so, I was protecting myself, my friends, my family, my community, those who are unable to get the vaccine. So I know that we might be implementing a vaccine passport here in Ontario, and I think that is definitely one of the a very good decision, and I think that it will help protect a lot of people, and the majority of Canadians are vaccinated anyway. So you can already see the willingness to get vaccinated, and you can see people who understand the importance of being vaccinated as well.
Great, thank you. Mr. Elue, please go ahead.
I have been vaccinated, and I believe public-facing federal employees also should be vaccinated. The question of mandatory vaccinations is one where I question whether it's imposing upon human rights, people's right to choose for reasons of maybe pregnancy, maybe reasons that are akin to their religious beliefs. So vaccination for me is critical, which I have done in my own life. But as far as a mandatory imposition, I can't say that it's the right way to go.
Thank you, Mr. Elue. Mr. Maloney.
Thank you for the question. This is an issue I personally feel very strongly about. The answer is yes. I believe in mandatory vaccinations for anybody who can get vaccinated. If there's medical reasons or other health-based reasons that prevent you from getting vaccinated, there has to be exceptions for that, obviously. This election is about a number of things, and this is one of the critical pieces to the election. When I go back to the House of Commons, if I'm lucky enough to keep my job after September the 20th, I want to make sure that other people who are sitting in that chamber are fully vaccinated. Erin O'Toole has sitting members of Parliament who are not vaccinated. Erin O'Toole will not make a commitment for his candidates to be fully vaccinated. That is unacceptable, because you know what? It's not about them. It's about me, and it's about you, and it's about everybody else. I've had to turn people away from my campaign office, people I've known my whole life. That's not an easy thing to do, but it has to be done. This is an issue that has to be, people have to take a very strong stance on. Erin O'Toole stands up the other day and says, my health minister will be fully vaccinated. What about his justice minister? What about his foreign affairs minister? What about the procurement minister who's responsible for such things? It's completely unacceptable. I applaud the premier for what he's done recently. He made his own caucus stand up and get vaccinated, unless there was a medical basis for not being able to do so. He's introduced passports in the city of Toronto, or in the province of Ontario, as the mayor has in the city of Toronto. This is the kind of bold leadership we need on this issue. We can't be wishy-washy. We've been through 18 months of unprecedented challenges. And it is clear, based on medical evidence, that the way out of this, so that the businesses succeed, the economy succeeds, so that the Daily Bread Food Bank isn't as busy as it has been, is vaccination. And anybody who doesn't believe in that, I'm sorry, that's unacceptable to me.
Thank you, Mr. Maloney. Ms. Bains.
Vaccines are a safe tool for us and an effective tool to help us manage COVID and get through this pandemic. I myself am fully vaccinated. My family and friends are. My campaign team is. And you're right. We need a leader that won't flip-flop. But I think also there's colleagues of yours, Mr. Maloney, that have been flip-flopping as well.
Every single one of them is
in your
vaccinated.
candidate in Stittsville as well. So what we're saying is the people that cannot be vaccinated, we encourage everyone to be vaccinated. If you cannot be vaccinated, we want you to take a rapid test daily, especially if you're a federal worker. If you are not a federal worker, and you want to board a plane, a train, a boat, or be in public locations that require vaccination, we require you to provide us with a certificate that shows that you do not have COVID and you passed the test. So that's our stance on it. And we've been very firm. There are people that cannot be vaccinated, but our stance is actually the same as the Trudeau stance. We will, everybody that needs to be vaccinated should be vaccinated. If you cannot, you have to get rapid testing done.
That's not our stance, to be
Thank you.
clear.
Thank you, everyone. The vaccine, mandatory vaccine question is, of course, something that's very topical right now. Thank you all for your responses. I've been watching the time, so that was our last question from our audience. Thank you all very much for those fantastic questions, and thank you all for your responses. We are going to move now into our closing remarks. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to share their closing remarks. Please, we've had a wonderful debate so far. So we're going to go into the home stretch, and we will start our closing remarks with Mr. Elue.
Thank you. I took the risk in putting my name on this ballot for this election because how would posterity judge me if I never said anything on behalf of my children's future? It's going to be a risk for you too, to cast your precious vote in favor of the Green Party. However, that's what you must do. I believe we're called for such a time as this. When I told my massage therapist while I was running for this election, she asked me what she could do to make a difference with the climate crisis. I almost felt bad to say, vote green, because it takes more than recycling habits and eco-friendly vehicles to have the desired impact. You need the political will to first stop the pollution, end the subsidies, ban fracking, cancel Trans Mountain Pipeline, and transition to a green economy. It's one thing having the guts to stand up to your enemies. It's a whole different thing standing up to your friends, your corporate friends. Your vote is the only motivation Ottawa needs to do the right thing. Don't wait. Use the advanced polling voting options. Find the info on my website, voteafamelue.ca. Take bold action. Take green action. Vote now. Vote green. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Elue. Mr. Maloney, your closing remarks, please.
Thank you. And let me just say thank you again to the organizers of this event. I mean, these debates are critical because constituents need to hear from us. I've been fortunate enough to be the member of parliament for this riding where I've lived for 45 years, now for 6 years. And accountability doesn't mean just showing up for the odd all candidates debate. It means showing up all the time, everywhere, when people ask you to be there. I've done that for the past 6 years. My government has been there for our constituents, whether it's on food security, homelessness, affordable housing, supporting people who are in need, and I'm very proud of that. I would like to continue doing that work for this riding because there's a lot more work to do. This election has some very, very critical issues, some of which we covered tonight. Unfortunately, 2 minutes isn't enough to cover any of these topics. We could have 2 hours of debate on anything we talked about tonight, and we should. Tomorrow night we will, in fact, on climate change. Childcare, fundamental to the success of our young families in Etobicoke-Lakeshore and across the country. We have a plan. Let's not get put in a position where that plan cannot be implemented. Vaccines, I'm very clear. My leader is very clear. My colleagues are very clear. This is the path forward. This is how we get out of this pandemic. This is how we address the issues, all of these issues that we're facing right now. Health supports. We will continue to work with the provinces and the provincial governments to make sure that they have the funds that they need to do what they have to do. Public safety. We haven't talked about that tonight. Gun crime in this city is significant. My opponent from the Conservatives alluded to it, and yet her leader is prepared to move back on gun safety. He wants to legalize guns that were used in heinous crimes in this country. That's unacceptable. We have been very, very clear. In fact, we've implemented strong, clear rules. More needs to be done. And the last thing which we didn't talk about tonight was our Indigenous communities. That is an issue that we have committed significant effort to, significant funds. We started in 2015, there was 105 clean water advisories across this country. We've eliminated 109. And we have a plan in place for every single Indigenous community that has challenges with that issue. And they are ready to be rolled out. Let's not stop the progress because the funding is there, the plan is in place, the people are there working on it, and it needs to get done.
Thank
So
you.
I ask the people in Etobicoke-Lakeshore to support me one more time so that I can continue to represent you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Maloney. Ms. Bains?
Thank you. So people ask me why I'm running for office. So I've been hearing affordability. I asked people, I said, are you better off now than when you were 6 years ago? And the answer is no. Affordability is a huge issue. We're not getting the services we deserve. Our affordability is starting to go down. They are looking for a change. So what are we going to do? Crime is up as well, 20% within the last 5-6 years. So, and it's not the legal gun holders that are the issue. It is the illegal illegal firearms that are being smuggled. So what we ask again, what is the plan to stop the illegal firearms that are being smuggled into Canada? Those are the drug dealers and traffickers are the problem and as far as public safety goes. Those are the issues that we need to take back and address and fix. We need to look at the real issues. It is poverty. It is the welfare of people. It is jobs. It's the economy. We are ready to move forward and make that change happen. It was the Conservatives who led us through a recession successfully last time, and it's the Conservatives that are going to do it again this time around. I'm asking you to vote for a secure future, a known future, vote Conservative, vote Indira Bains. It's time for change in Etobicoke-Lakeshore.
Thank you, Ms. Bains. And we will wrap up with Ms. Kane. Please go ahead.
I would also like to end up by saying thank you to our host, Daily Bread and Lamp. Thank you to my fellow candidates and the audience for attending. And thank you for accommodating me through Zoom. I appreciate that. And I just wanted to say that even prior to running, I, as a student, was looking for our government to do better. Our current Liberal government continues to run on policy they could have already passed with their majority. And the Conservative Party voted to not recognize climate change. They've also voted against banning conversion therapy, which is something I take very personally. There is so much to protect and improve in Etobicoke and in Canada, and we cannot afford to rely on the Liberal Party who has continued to promise change and then not deliver when it comes to protecting the environment and implement truly affordable housing. And then the Conservative Party who wants to make cuts to social programs that we need. Through the NDP, we can provide these things that people need because there's no financial cost greater than giving people the life that they deserve, a better life. And I will try my best to do so. And I am excited to get up every day and meet people, hear what they have to say. And thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. We will conclude our all candidates debate today with a thank you to all of our candidates for your participation today. Sasha, thank you for going the extra mile, even though you're ill, to still join us and feel better soon. To the team behind the scenes here, you all can't see them, but there's an incredible team behind the scenes who have made this happen today and worked with and mastered technology to ensure that you were able to enjoy this all candidates debate today. So thank you to everyone at the Daily Bread Food Bank and LAMP team and the team at the Etobicoke-Lakeshore Community Network who worked together to organize this all candidates debate. Much appreciated. And just a reminder to everyone, the election is on September 20th. Early voting happens between September 10th and 13th. And to find out all the ways that you can vote and participate in this election and use your voice to make sure that the issues you care about are represented in this election, you can go to the Elections Canada website to find out all of the ways that you can vote. Please use your voice and participate. Be part of this process and engage in the civic responsibility and right that you do have in this election. Take good care, stay safe, and go out and vote.